It's 3 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. Your phone says you've been awake for 40 minutes, and a thought creeps in that feels like failure. Something is wrong with you. But the real answer is far stranger. For most of human history, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a disorder. It was the plan. Your body isn't broken. It's remembering. Think about the last time this happened to you. Not annoyed yet. Not panicked yet. Just awake, in the dark, with your mind strangely calm. That calm is a clue. Historian Roger Ekirch spent over a decade combing through diaries, court records, medical texts, and literature from pre-industrial Europe. What he found rewrote what we thought we knew about sleep. People didn't sleep in one long block. They slept in two. A first sleep starting shortly after dusk, then, around midnight, they woke. Not from insomnia, not from stress. They woke because that's simply when the first sleep ended. This waking period lasted 1 to 2 hours. People used it to pray, to talk quietly with a partner, to tend a fire. Some visited neighbors. Some had sex. Physicians of the era even recommended this window for conceiving children, believing people were calmer and more attentive after a first rest. Then, when the body was ready, a second sleep began, carrying them until dawn. Ekirch found this pattern referenced so often in so many places that it couldn't be a coincidence. It appeared in French court testimony, English medical guides, and Italian literary works. It showed up in legal records describing what someone was doing during their first sleep when a crime occurred nearby. It was so ordinary that nobody bothered to explain it. Why would they? Everyone already knew. So what changed? Artificial light, cheap, abundant, and everywhere. Gas lighting spread through cities in the 1800s. Electric light followed soon after. Suddenly, the sharp boundary between day and night blurred into something softer, something that could be pushed back with the flip of a switch. People stayed up later because for the first time in human history, they could. The natural first sleep got pushed back, compressed, and eventually merged with the second. Within a few generations, biphasic sleep wasn't just rare. It was forgotten entirely. Nobody decided this. Nobody voted on it. It just quietly happened, the way habits do when the environment around them shifts, and nobody notices the shift until it's already complete. But here's the part that should unsettle you a little. Your biology didn't get the memo. In the early 1990s, psychiatrist Thomas Wehr ran an experiment at the National Institute of Mental Health that put this theory to a direct test. He gathered a group of volunteers and placed them in an environment with 14 hours of darkness every night, roughly matching the long winter nights our ancestors would have experienced without electric light to push against them. No clocks, no artificial light cheating the body into staying alert past its limits. Just darkness for a stretch far longer than any modern night allows. What happened surprised almost no one who had already read Ekirch's work, and surprised almost everyone else. Within a few weeks, the subject's sleep split in two. A period of sleep, then a stretch of quiet wakefulness, sometimes lasting over an hour. Then a second period of sleep, carrying them the rest of the way to morning. Nobody trained them to do this. Nobody suggested it. Their bodies simply reverted on their own to a pattern that 14 hours of darkness apparently still knows how to produce. Which means the 3 a.m. waking you dread might not be a malfunction at all. It might be your circadian rhythm attempting to run a program written for a world lit by fire and moonlight, inside a bedroom lit by streetlights and phone screens. But here's the twist that complicates the tidy version of this story. Not every ancestor slept this way. In 2015, neuroscientist Jerome Siegel led a study observing 3 modern hunter-gatherer and pre-industrial societies, groups in Tanzania, Namibia, and Bolivia, who still live largely without electric light. If segmented sleep were simply the natural human default, these groups should have shown it clearly. They didn't. Their sleep, tracked with wrist monitors over hundreds of nights, came in a single consolidated block, much closer to what a modern sleep doctor would consider normal. No obvious midnight waking period. No first sleep and second sleep split cleanly in two. So which is it? Was Ekirch wrong? Not exactly. The honest answer is more interesting than either extreme. Human sleep appears to be flexible, shaped heavily by climate, season, and how much darkness surrounds it. The long winter nights of pre-industrial Europe, sometimes 14 or more hours of darkness, seem to invite that midnight gap. The shorter, more consistent nights nearer the equator, where seagulls' groups lived, don't create the same pressure. Your ancestors weren't running one universal program. They were running an adaptable one, responsive to how much dark surrounded them, which is arguably a far more remarkable finding than a single fixed pattern would have been. And that adaptability is exactly why Wehr's 14-hour darkness experiment matters so much. It wasn't testing some fixed ancestral programming. It was testing what your particular biology still does, right now, today, when given enough uninterrupted dark to work with. The subjects in his lab weren't hunter-gatherers near the equator. They were modern people, living modern lives, and their bodies still split sleep in two the moment the artificial light disappeared and the night got long enough to allow it. Your brain didn't evolve for 8 consecutive hours of dark, silent unconsciousness. It evolved for a rhythm with a built-in pause in the middle, a quiet room inside the night that everyone used to know how to sit in. So why does waking at 3 a.m. feel so awful now if it used to feel completely normal? Context. Ancient people woke into a world that expected it. There was no ticking clock demanding they fall back asleep in the next 90 seconds or ruin the entire following day. There was no glowing rectangle promising 8 new reasons to worry before dawn. There was quiet, dim firelight, and something modern nights rarely offer: permission. Sleep researcher Charles Czeisler, who has spent decades studying circadian rhythms at Harvard, has shown how modern light exposure, especially the blue heavy light emitted by screens, suppresses melatonin production and confuses the body's internal clock about what time it actually is. You wake at 3 a.m. the way your ancestors did, on schedule, right where the rhythm expects. But instead of sitting calmly by a fire, you check a phone that quietly tells your brain it's still daytime. The waking isn't the problem. The panic bolted on top of it is. Consider what your ancestors did during that midnight window. They didn't demand their bodies return to unconsciousness on command, the way we do now, glaring at an alarm clock and calculating exactly how many hours of sleep we're about to lose. They used the time instead. They existed inside it, without urgency. And because there was no pressure forcing sleep to return immediately, sleep generally did return on its own, right on schedule for the second half of the night. Compare that to now. You wake up, you glance at a clock, you calculate how many hours remain until an alarm goes off. You feel a small jolt of dread settle into your chest. That dread releases cortisol into your bloodstream, and cortisol happens to be precisely the chemical that makes falling back asleep harder. So you lie there, cortisol rising, watching minutes tick past, spiraling over a wakefulness that used to be completely unremarkable to the people who came before you. You're not fighting insomnia. You're fighting a modern reaction to an ancient, perfectly ordinary rhythm. There's something almost tender in this idea, if you sit with it for a moment. Your body carries a memory older than light bulbs, older than clocks, older than the very concept of a full night's sleep as one long, unbroken thing. That memory surfaces quietly, usually somewhere around 3 a.m., asking for something modern life no longer knows how to offer it. Not 8 hours of total silence. Just an hour of stillness without judgment attached to it. Think about how differently this reframes the experience. Instead of a body failing you, imagine a body faithfully executing instructions written millennia before insomnia was even a word anyone used. Instead of a mind sabotaging your rest, imagine a mind simply following a rhythm it inherited, one that predates streetlights, predates factories, predates the 8-hour workday that quietly demanded 8 consecutive hours of sleep to match it. None of this means insomnia isn't real, or that chronic sleep struggles don't deserve serious attention from a doctor. Genuine sleep disorders exist, and they're worth treating with real care, not folklore. But for the ordinary, occasional wide-awake stretch in the middle of the night, the one that arrives without explanation and leaves the same quiet way, the truth may be far gentler than something is wrong with you. What would it feel like to stop fighting that hour? To let it stay quiet instead of turning it into a countdown towards catastrophe? Some researchers studying sleep now suggest that the anxiety around night waking may do more damage than the waking itself. The wakefulness was never the enemy. The clock watching was. Take away the clock, take away the dread. And what's left is simply a pause, the kind your ancestors filled with prayer, quiet conversation, or the gentle work of tending a dying fire back to life. Notice what almost never appears in Ekirch's historical accounts of that midnight hour. Nobody worried about being tired the next day. Nobody reached for a device that measured, scored, and judged the quality of their rest. There was no app quietly informing them each morning that their sleep had failed to meet a target. The pressure to sleep perfectly is a distinctly modern invention, layered on top of a body that was never built for perfection in the first place, only for rhythm. And rhythms, by definition, have gaps in them. That's what makes them rhythms, and not straight, unbroken lines. Even the language around this has shifted. Ancestors didn't call the midnight hour sleep maintenance insomnia. They didn't call it anything, because it needed no name. It was simply part of the night, the same way a breath needs no name for the moment between inhale and exhale. Maybe the next time you wake at 3 a.m., you won't reach for your phone first. You'll remember that for most of the humans who ever lived, this hour wasn't a glitch in the system. It was a room in the house of sleep that everyone used to know how to sit in, without fear, without a clock keeping score. It's 3 a.m. You're lying there, awake. And for the first time, that might feel less like something broken and more like something ancient, finally being remembered.